We come on a day in which the world has been changed by what occurred this weekend. And I guess we are going to have to weather the storm because I think the storm is coming. The world changed this weekend because I don't think we are going to be able to avoid a widening of the war in the Middle East. It's no longer going to just be these groups out here, Hamas, and Al Qaeda and some of the others. I think we have got to now prepare for a war between Israel and Iran, and what that has to do with the United States remains to be seen. But I think the U.S. is very much involved in it. It has been very traumatic for those of us who like to see the world calm down and see so much chaos in the world and so much chaos here. And I think that everything that we're seeing here in this country has a lot to do with the chaos we're seeing in a much wider uh, way in the world. We forget how much of a role this country plays in the calmness in the world. And when this world is not, and when this country is not calm, then the world tends to be a little less calm as a result of it. It's just amazing that we've had this ripple effect that I think it started. I don't think it started necessarily um, with anything to do with Iran and Hamas and all of that. I think it has to do with the election of this country. I think that we are the world is watching what's going on, and I think that the problem in Ukraine, this continued effort to run the world, and we have our fingers in so many different parts of the world's problems. Some of it legitimate, and some of it, a lot of it illegitimate. And I think that the world is just now beginning to lose. It's like losing focus. The world is no longer being led, let's say, by the one superpower that we claim we are the only superpower in the world right now. And I think that that is being challenged, and I think this is a part of that challenge. I think that when you look at BRICS and you look at these organizations that are these countries that are joining that organization, I think you're seeing a new world order that's being created. And I think that this attack here, although it has to do with the Middle East, I think is much larger than that. I think we're seeing a worldwide revolution taking place. Some of it non-military, but a lot of it is military. And you look at what has happened in terms of Afghanistan and how the country exited out of Afghanistan after being there 20 years and having to exit out. Didn't have to exit out the way it did, but exit out of Afghanistan inappropriately, and the message that sent to the world. And I think that you have to look also at how the country is seen around the world. I can tell you, having traveled outside the country, this country is now being viewed as a paper tiger when it comes down to its ideals. This idea that this country is about democracy and it's the lead of the world in terms of the people having the right to decide their own leaders and all of that. I think this country's come down a long way. And if the world stops believing that you are the legitimate leader, let's say, that your country is no longer looked at as being legitimate, your government is not looked at as being legitimate, and looked at as being weak, I think that what that does is that it gives those persons watching and waiting for an opportunity to strike out to do that. And I think what we saw this weekend was them the striking out based upon the weaknesses that are found here. It's amazing what's going on here in this country. And reading the other day that this country gave Iran $6 billion, and they claim that that's for benign reasons and things of that sort. So they put it over here in this particular compartment. It has nothing to do with anything militarily, and as if they're going to compartmentalize the aid, and it has nothing to do with anything they're doing in terms of freeing up other money where it can do things that are along the lines of whatever the country needs as far as its domestic issues. But the additional money that it has, you can put it in whatever drawer you want, whatever coffee you want to put it in, but it does not mean it will not at some point play a role in fueling the aggression of Iran. I think that Iran has now run out of room for leveraging itself to stay on the sideline. A lot of these problems that are happening, Iran has been sponsoring these things, these terror attacks and so on. And given the fact that they went into Israel, this was a well-planned, well-coordinated attack. And the mere fact they were able to penetrate into Israel as they did, and Israel now has its 911. That has to be studied as to how that happened. But the intelligence community, and we have our intel also, but the intelligence community in Israel, living in the most dangerous neighborhood in the world, the mere fact that they could be attacked that way, land, sea, and then the rockets and so on and so forth, that were being sent there to such an extent, those rockets going into Israel was to such an extent it overwhelmed the dome, the defense of Israel. So many rockets that were being sent into Israel, and that can't be Hamas. It has to be some group that can manufacture these weapons.
Thing is too, when I saw this video footage from the BBC on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
there was a man who had grabbed he was a person who had a hostage. This person I saw on camera from the BBC doesn't look to be a person from the Middle East. This person looked to be from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So there's obviously a multinational, multi-ethnic group that's part of Hamas now, or whoever's the ancillary organizations connected to it, because these people I saw on this video did not look like Middle Eastern people to me.
Mm-hmm.
They are definitely more from African nations, I would say. I don't know which African nations, but they definitely, and it makes sense because Islam has a wide spread, throws a wide net. So I mean, they could be pulling people from all over, all of the mostly predominantly Muslim nations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a wide net.
Yeah, you're making a point. I think that you have to look at the new alliances that are developing in the world also, and look at those nations that are now aligning themselves. Iran is a part of BRICS, which is a counter organization. Started out with BRICS is BRICS. Five nations. Brazil, yes, Russia,
India.
And look at these nations that are involved in
China.
it. Look at China, and then South Africa. Those nations are now realigning into an alternative world power. These people, these five nations started out with. Now they've had six others that joined it, and some others on the sideline, probably candidates for that in the future. But already it has 2/3 of the world's population in it, and so you're seeing a new alliance being formed, and the U.S. is just losing a lot of its weight. And be that as it may, and I don't always agree with the foreign policy of the country, but I have to say that the country does have a stabilizing influence in a lot of ways. And now that that's being challenged, and I mean it's being challenged everywhere. When I travel outside the country, the thing that I try to do is listen in on what's being said. You get in these taxes, for example, And it's amazing how informed people are on the street. Of course, taxi drivers are listening to customers from different parts of the world, driving people uh, in their country, but they're from all over. A lot of tourists are from all over the world, and they'll listen to these conversations they're having in these taxis. And when you get in those taxis and take these what they call these bush taxis, as I do in West Africa, it is amazing the kind of conversation you have with these taxi drivers. And I can always pick up on the energy of how they feel about the United States because of what they will say, and also how you're treated as an American. My status in Africa is not the same as it once was. When you say you were from the United States, you were saying something very big, and there was a place of prestige. It's not so much that anymore. I was in Gambia for the whole month of May, and there were a lot of things that changed, and you can see that they are now looking at. I'll tell you, they don't. First of all, they don't think that the elections in this country are anything different than they are in the third world, or in what they call the banana republics. You get a sense that when America's speaking right now, when America talks, nobody's listening. And I really was quite shocked at it, because the year before, let's see, did I leave the country? I didn't leave the country the year before that. I normally travel outside the country, every year, but I didn't travel outside the country in 2021. I didn't leave the country. So when I went back abroad, went back to traveling outside the country this past May, I was kind of surprised that I was in Senegal. I was there for 2 days. In Gambia, I was in Gambia for pretty much the whole month of May otherwise. And it was just amazing what I was hearing, and some of the things happening in the airports too. I went through Brussels, and that was not good either. And I kept saying, I don't think that I'm hearing what I heard 2 years ago, when I'm not getting the treatment I got 2 years ago. But things have changed. I can tell you how you can feel the atmosphere is different. And it's not the same as it was a couple of years ago. Our persona around the world has been altered. And I think there's a lot to do with what we saw this weekend, what we are reading about and hearing about on the news this weekend. And I think Trump is saying it also correctly. Trump said if he had been president, I don't know if that's appropriate to say this in this atmosphere, but he said if he had been president, this would not have happened. And I think that has a lot of credence to it. But we have to understand why that would be true. I don't think that we think that these countries were afraid of Trump. That's not why they were pretty much in this one-upmanship that we're seeing right now. I don't think that's the fear of Donald Trump. I think what it is that they recognize that Donald Trump was one that respected the national identity of other countries and also their national interests, and is willing to abide by and accommodate to it.
The Hungarian president talking about the Democrats, and Trump understood that the Hungary's got its own culture, and he respected that. He didn't try to attempt to tell them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an American tendency to go everywhere and try to make every place you go
You're making a very good point.
And even John F. Kennedy, the president, said there's not American solution for every problem in the world. There isn't. They think it was from Woodrow Wilson's administration. They thought they could
Mhm.
export democracy. They always have this tendency to think it worked. We want it here. We have it here. We want it there. And that's a form of imperialism and colonialism. What you do is present you
Mhm.
present your works, let people say, gee, we want to emulate them. And they voluntarily start migrating towards your way of thinking, not being forced, not being manipulated into it. And that's what we've always done.
Yeah, John, you're making a very good point. The I was stunned. Let's see, 3 years ago, I was stunned. I went back to a place I had rented. They had it's on the ocean. Atlantic Ocean has an outlet to the Atlantic Ocean. Just a beautiful resort, and I stayed there. And I was going to. I thought I had planned to go to another place to stay, but I decided, let me go back to where I was. And I had my driver to drive into this one what was a resort 3 years ago. And when I went there and drove up to the gate, I saw this this little thing you put this thing down. It's stops cars from passing. So they had that gate up. I was surprised to see the gate up. And when I got out of the taxi and started approaching the front of this establishment, people came out with these heavily armed. And I was telling them that I came to look for a place to stay the night, because I got in the country late, and I was looking for some place to house overnight. And my intention was to get other housing later on, but I had gotten lost a little bit where I was, raining and everything, and I couldn't get my bearings straight. But I knew where this place was in the main street. And what I found out is that place was no longer a resort for tourists. What it was a Chinese. There was a Chinese embassy. The Chinese had purchased that unbelievably nice place. Lots of rooms and things like that. I think they probably have that for the ambassadors coming from around the world, but meeting in Africa, because that's a hot spot right now. And it was just amazing to see China, and China is a major presence in Africa right now. That is mainly because China does not have a colonial footprint in Africa. And that's major right now, because a lot of those nations are chomping at the bits about the fact that they have this colonial history, and they are really rising up against any aspects of that. You saw that in Niger just a few weeks ago, where France was under duress, and through France, then the Western alliances that would be brought into that, and that whole discussion about France get out of here, and then any of those others that are attached to France, and we are NATO, and France is NATO. That was it was just amazing to see how that played out in terms of Niger. Niger was very calm on the surface. It was calm, but underneath it, there was a tremendous amount of anger and resentment, because Niger was supplying the uranium, oil, and things like that, and they looked at the poverty in the country. And I don't blame all of that on the colonial presence, but I blame some of it on that, because what the colonials do is they make a pact with the leadership, with the elite, and get them paid off. And then when you pay them off, they allow you to have access to the resources while the people remain poor. And that was, you saw the uprising that occurred there. I'm just amazed, but what I'm saying here, I'm just amazed at the image I'm running into around the world now. America is not seen the same way that it was seen prior to. I think that that the country was respected under Trump, but that's not because of any fear. Trump is exactly what Victor Orban. That's what John was. This is what John was alluding to. Victor Orban of Hungary. They were asking him about what does he think would be a solution to getting the world to be more calm and have more focus and things of that sort. He said, bring Trump back. And if you ever listen to Victor Orban, and you listen to him and listen to these politicians in this country here, you see how shallow these politicians are. Orban is a major voice in the international community, and he, like Trump, is a nationalist. And unlike this country, he's not going to allow Hungary to become a international cesspool where you're dumping your people into the country. Hungary is going to remain hungry, and they thought they were going to be able to defeat him in the election that just came up, and they had targeted him. The intel communities had targeted Orban, and Orban was returned for, I think, his third or fourth term in record numbers, because the people recognize that he is a national leader of Hungary, and he has a world presence because he is showing some things about how to manage the country well. That's been a test for other countries that are not managing their countries as well as he's managing his country, because they're bringing in too many people from the outside and trying to do too many things. And you can't do too many things the way they're doing it right now well. And Orban is not doing Hungary is for the Hungarian people. And they're very focused on that. And because of that, they're able to be a model of what the national leadership should be in the other countries. That's what Trump was doing. Say anything you want to about what the leadership of this country under Trump. Donald Trump was a nationalist, and he put America first, and he had that as his foreign policy, and they began to appreciate that, because before that, America had his fingers in parts of the world it shouldn't have had his fingers in, and trying to run the world from Washington, and the world was tired of that. And that's what BRICS is about. And Donald Trump was, in fact, that this is the first time we've had a president that went into office and did not get involved in a protracted, unwinnable, non-stop war where you're fighting, we fight these endless wars. The war is Vietnam War. That war went on how many years? And then the Afghanistan war. All these wars we're involved in, these are non-ending wars. It's almost like we like to be involved in wars for the other things that come with the wars. And that's a lot of graft that goes on, a lot of people that are being paid under the table, a lot of graft you see. Look in Ukraine as an example of that. Look at the Biden administration's fingers that are tied into Zelensky, who they made it, who they pretend he is another Winston Churchill. And a lot of these wars are just places for the feeding frenzy that goes on behind the scenes, where they are laundering money. And we'll see how it plays out here. But I think that this is going to, if they're going to do their job, they're going to have to look into the alliance between the United States and Ukraine and its leadership to find out what's really going on behind the scenes, because a lot of things that are going on here have to do with some things that are happening underneath the table. Ukraine is not being led by the modern Winston Churchill. Vladimir Zelensky is not the British leader of World War II. And all these lies they're telling, this Ukraine cannot win this war. This war cannot be won by Ukraine. So why are we not selling this war?
As you see, and then another thing is too, like we mentioned, Churchill. Everybody's got this great impression of him. They made movies about him. He was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
He really had contempt for the United States. We were just there for his being the armorer for them. I don't think Britain ever played back the war debt to the United States that the Lend-Lease program and stuff. They never made an attempt to do that kind of stuff. So, I mean, they've always looked at us as their colonies in waiting for them. They had that temperamental flare up there, but they're still part of us. That's my walk away from Churchill. He's a mixed bag. There's some things I really admire about him.
Mm-hmm.
He was definitely a colonialist. He was definitely an imperial empire minded. He was arrogant. But he did have an understanding of human nature that I think that a lot of people lack. But there's some things he's held that I really did think was accurate. But he was a mixed bag as a person, and he did a lot of stuff that we're still paying the price for in the United States and England and all the other countries of Europe. I mean, he was not a really friendly friends of the United States.
You're reading it correctly. You're definitely reading him exactly right, John. Churchill was a mixed bag, as you said. His interest was the British Empire, and that's the fight that he was involved in. He wasn't trying to bring democracy anywhere. The British Empire was one of the great violators of the democratic process in all of the countries that they were, in fact, over. Starting back in, I think it starts back there in the 16th century. And the sun would never set on the British Empire. That was challenged in World War I, and the U.S. I think that's why we don't see the imperialist role in a very indirect way of the United States, because the U.S. came into World War II, which was really an attack upon the empires that were there, the British Empire and so on, and this fight that occurred in the aftermath of that war, because you cannot be talking about fighting for democracy, and then you have empires where the people in those empires don't have any democracy and don't have any say so in their own governance.
That's the reason right there. Right, Mahatma Gandhi struck right when the iron was hot, right after the Second World War ended. His movement for independence, because now he can embarrass the British people, the British Empire. Because after the fight with Nazis, and basically they're saying, "Oh, but what about us?"
Yeah, John, there's so many different angles to it. I mean, we didn't get here by a lineal, this happened and this happened as a result, and so on. There are many different corridors through which this coming together to create the world that we're in right now come from a lot of convergent different places. And the convergence would have been from a variety of places, but we're now here from a lot of things that occurred. World War II is a part of it, of course, World War I. And the world's been moving in an anti-colonial way, going back to Woodrow Wilson saying that he wants to make the world safe for democracy. And that's all well and good in terms of if that's the point of view that you have in terms of your own nation state. And that would be your role in terms of not allowing that to prevail in places where you have influence. You can simply make that more democratic where you are. But to say that you're going to spread this throughout the world and you're going to be the progenitors of that, that's a different problem there. That's a different matter. And to try to impose that has created a lot of problems. And then in the Second World War, don't forget now, this war started out because of the attack on Poland, September the 1st, 1939. And when that happened, it was very clear that what Hitler had in mind, he was not going to be appeased, and they had to fight at that point because by going into Poland, he was going into the breadbasket of Europe. And if he controls Poland, he controls the grain. And that could be the starvation type of thing. You can control the food supply, and that weakens the nation that you are, in fact, aggressing against. And so they tried to appease Hitler up until that point, the Czechoslovakia appeasement and things of that sort. And this weasel, Naval Chamberlain, coming back saying that he believes it's peace in our time, and didn't know that when he left out of the room, having negotiated with Hitler in Munich, that Hitler had said as he left the room, said some words behind his back because he sized up that this man was willing to do anything in order to appease, to stay out of the war with Germany, and that just feathered the interests of and the aggression of Adolf Hitler at that point. All of that would have come as a result of the ending of that war, and the U.S. got involved in it in 1942 after being attacked in 1941 at Pearl Harbor, but got involved in the war full-fledged in 1942 when the die had already been cast. And I think that's what Dennis Prager is missing when he says that this country has been exceptional in terms of foreign policy. It comes in when the war had necessarily changed its tenor, is now a war for liberation of those colonial states. Because now you're opposing the person that's gobbling up Europe in a colonial manner. And so a lot of the things that are happening based on the war has brought the U.S. into it in a different standing, because the war is now turning into a war to get rid of one of the reasons why there's so much aggression going on in Europe, and that was because of this empire building. You go into Africa and see it. You can go into French-speaking parts of Africa, as Senegal is. I think I was saying last week that I was asked in Senegal a few years ago. They would ask me why they asked why you don't speak French, because Senegal is French-speaking, and you go into some parts of Africa, Angola, for example, Portuguese is spoken there as the parliamentary language. You go into Spanish Sahara, as it's called. I think that Equatorial Guinea, they have 3 different Guineas. They have what they call Guinea Conakry. Guinea Conakry is French. I think Equatorial Guinea, which is where Jammeh went when he was run out of Gambia. I think Equatorial Africa is French. I could be mistaken about that, but I think that's French also. But different parts of the colonial world, a lot of it is English because the British Empire was so vast. But you go in there and see indications of the colonial past by the language that is spoken there. I don't know if I've been in a place where Leopold was in the Congo. Now I've not been to the Congo, but when I was in Brussels, in fact, when I'm in Brussels, I can't even tell what the language is in Brussels, because you have to have people at the airport that can speak to the tourists, and because we are monolingual in this country, so when we travel, if you're not speaking English, we're lost. So, but when I'm in Brussels, Belgium, I haven't really got a sense of how their language sounds. I'm not even sure because I've never heard. I'm just thinking now through my experience. I go through Brussels quite a bit when I go to West Africa, and I don't think I've ever heard the native language in Brussels. I'm just thinking back to what have I heard? I've only heard English there, but I'm not saying that out in the countryside, but the airport. I've never heard the language. I've never heard the indigenous language there. But they're multilingual also. But in Africa, the Congo was colonized by the Belgians, and Leopold I. His name, by the way, comes up in a poem written by Langston Hughes, where he said when he was talking about the oppression of different groups, he said they cut off my hands in the Congo. They lynched me still in Mississippi. And he tied in that he didn't tie it in the way that I would tie it in. I say that they lynched in Mississippi because they cut your hands off in the Congo, and the two are tied together. When the colonialists are making their stand in a part of the world, that part of the world, the people that are from that part of the world have their rights in remission as a result of that. And so when you have a weakened, let's say a weakened homeland, excuse me, I'm having a little bit of problems here. You know, when you have a weakened homeland, John, can you bring some water? Too much coffee. I'm drinking too much coffee around here. When your homeland is weakened, then all the children that are scattered around the world from that homeland, they are weakened also. That's really why there's no solution to the problem between Israel, which is in a bad neighborhood. There's no solution because Israel is not going to give up the only nation state that it has. They are surrounded by people that want the problem in that part of the world is that they want to kill the people around in that neighborhood. Want to kill that neighbor, that single neighbor, and their politics is directed toward that design. That's what we saw this past weekend. If you, in fact, encourage that tendency out there where they feel they can move because the tendency is already there, what keeps them instead is that they look at who your partners are and the power of your partners. And if your partners are backing you, and that's clear they're backing you, and there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it, then they stay their hand but looking for an opportunity because the discontentment is there. And I don't think they'll ever going to, no matter how much more time passes, I don't think they're ever going to be acceptance of having Israel in their neighborhood. I don't think they'll ever get over that because Israel, you look at Israel now, it was created in 1948. They're just as adamant about Israel getting out of there and out of that area now as they were then. If you thought of just Yasser Arafat is gone. The animosity there is still there, and it's because the idea they have is that they're on the land that once belonged to the Palestinians, and other Arab populations. They were in control, and they're not in control of that anymore. The Gaza Strip and all of that the strip of land and things like that. So they want they want what they had prior to 1948. And it is not, that problem is unresolvable. And I find this interesting too. I find this to be quite interesting. When I go into northern Africa, oh, that's Arabic. You go into Egypt, the northeastern part of Africa, and next door you have Libya, you have Tunisia, called in what's called the Madrid. You have on the westernmost part of northern Africa, you have a country I really love, and that's Morocco. Been there a couple of times, and the people are just, I know they have a reputation otherwise, but I think the people are great there. I've had some great times there with people there, very open to Americans. And at that time, I've been there a couple of years, but when I was there, I was treated royally in Morocco. And let's see, what's that? Said Tunisia was a country there in northern Africa. All that is Arab influence. So when they start pulling rank on, they want Israel out of their neighborhood. It's interesting that that case is being made, because the Arabs are really a force to contend with in northern Africa, and really they are owners of a lot of land space in a lot of those places that are not run by Arabs, but the Arabs have a great influence. You see that. I saw that when I was surprised to see it when I was in Nigeria. When I say Arab, I'm talking basically about Islam, the Islamic influence. I was surprised when I was in Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest country in Africa. 135, 140 million people in Nigeria. And I was surprised when I went there to find out that of the 51 states, we have 50 states here. We can't even get that right. We have 50 Biden. We have 50 states in the United States.
Obama said we
Obama
had
had 57.
57.
These people are running the country, don't even know what the country is they're running. Nigeria has 51 states. What surprised me when I was there, and I think I've been to Nigeria twice, I think twice, maybe 3 times. And I was surprised when I went there to find out, like, the northern part of Nigeria has been conceded to the Islamists, and it was a way of calming Islam down. What the Muslims want is they want the territory, because they want Sharia law. And when they moved the capital from Lagos in Nigeria to Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria today, the people in the northern part of Nigeria were not going along with they're going to be ruled from Abuja, and they didn't accept they were being ruled from Lagos. They were carving up their own Sharia states. And to calm things down, what they did was, in fact, to give 1/3 of the states in Nigeria, 17 of them right now, are under Sharia law. And when they when they had the government in Abuja trying to enforce itself, its will, in the northern part of Nigeria, they took up arms against the government. And when the government went in there with force trying to put down what was considered to be a rebellion against the government, they took the government into Abuja. I mean, they took the war into Abuja. Started bombing a city, where if you go into Abuja, you wouldn't even think you're in Nigeria, because Abuja is a created city where they put $25 billion into its development and its creation, created a new capital. And what the Muslims did when they tried to go up there and restrain them and put them under the law of the national government, the Muslims had enough independence in that part of Nigeria that they simply resisted that. And when they took the military in there to try to make them comply with the national policy, they were telling them Sharia laws going to be practiced there. And to show their determination to make that a reality, they took the war into Abuja. When they started bombing Abuja, this $25 billion experiment, that was really a problem. I'm just making this case here that the world changed this weekend. The world changed. This attack, given the fact that the fingerprints are all over it from Iran, those mullahs there. And if you notice that in the past, whenever something occurred, they knew Iran was in back of it. They're the fomenters of terror around the world, and people know that Iran is doing that ever since the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini came into power in 1979 in Iran. Ever since they overthrew Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, ever since they overthrew the Shah under Carter, when Carter was president, ever since they overthrew the Shah of Iran and set up a fundamentalist Islamic state, Iran has been a pariah in the world. But this war is unlike what was going on, where you're, in fact, got a few people coming in there with those pea shooters and getting mowed down. This was a well-coordinated plan of attack. And to have attack from the air, the land, and the sea, and they were fighting. This fight was going on with Hamas. They were fighting inside of Israel. They did the same thing that the Muslims did in Nigeria. They took the war into the center. And when you are fighting in Israel and you got Hamas fighting in Israel, it's not them sending some rockets in there or sending one or two people in there and they're doing some kamikaze stuff. They had the military inside of Israel. And the fear is that foretells that, let's put it this way, that which they've been avoiding all these years, trying not to engage Iran, because Iran is promised that if they are attacked, they're going to put 40,000 suicide bombers out here. That's the threat that they pose. You have these fundamentalist Islamic governments and so on and so forth. People have become fanatical about their allegiance to that belief system, and it's been avoided all these years. But I don't think you can avoid it now. I really think the world changed. Fundamentally, there's a change that occurred this weekend with the attack on Israel inside of Israel itself. That's a fundamental, that sense of security with the Iron Dome and so on and so forth was breached. And therefore, that security doesn't exist anymore. Just simply fired weapons this weekend into Israel and overwhelmed the Iron Dome.
Which means there's two possible ways of looking at it. They just took a spitball and they just kept on firing as much as they could, and some landed. So they did test the the limits of the Iron Dome, or it could be also saying that maybe somebody leaked how many attacks that could simultaneously intercept. So if somebody on the inside, they were feeding intel. Either way, it's horrific. Now I'm not a big fan of Israel. I'm not, but because I'm not, I just think it's I just think I'm not part of that. I'm not a Zionist. It's not my fight. Okay.
Mhm.
But with these kind of attacks, what's going on here, what they did and grabbing people, they grabbed some commanders and stuff like this from the Israeli army. So
Mhm.
this has got to be insider information because they knew where these people were.
And that's something, John.
Yeah, their intel has been leaked.
There's a penetration that has to be investigated. There was too much coordination going on for it not to have had some insiders effort. But to be fighting inside of Israel, what that means, though, in the larger sense, is that they no longer have the security that's in place right now. The Iron Dome did not do that, which they felt a little bit of security because they could intercept. They found a way to penetrate that. The question is, what does that do in terms of escalation now?
It's going to escalate. The Israelis are not going to sit back and just let this go.
I think we're looking at the beginning point, and with the weakening of the U.S. and so on, its thumbprint on the world, I think we're looking at from two or three different places the potential beginning point of World War III. And I don't want to be alarmist here, but these wars that are starting out small, the mere fact they are reverberating down through time and they're not being resolved, and you have these people that are escalating these wars. I mean, look at the escalations going on in Ukraine right now, for example. Started out giving them these things, not gonna give them any jets. You're not gonna give them some of these tanks and so on and so forth. All of a sudden, they're donating tanks right now, and other instruments of war. And this war has been going on all these years, and there's no ending point in sight. Look at how these wars are now festering and escalating, and how that is dragging these superpowers into these wars. On one side, you have, I mean, look at the alliance between China and Russia and Ukraine. Look at the fact that Ukraine has placed Russia and China on the same side. How far in policy now have these two superpowers? Russia is not. Russia is. This idea that Russia is a major power in the world. It's a power because there's nuclear weapons. But when you take Russia and you align it with another nation that has nuclear weapons and also has a 1.3 billion people, China, and you push them up together and they become they form an alliance. BRICS is a part of the alliance they're in. That's very challenging to the old world order. We are looking at a new world order right now.
Another thing is too, China, if they have like you alluded to, they have like 1 billion, some people. The China would just see a massive loss of life for them as kind of a benefit. I mean, because they got so many mouths less to feed.
Yeah.
See, whereas we have a tendency to value human life and we can work within our structures and feed our people. Typically, they could just say, hey, we wiped out 20 million, 30 million people. That's just frees up more of the for resource for those who still exist. So they can burn through population. They're true communists. The humans are logs that for talk cast into a
You're
fire.
making a point. You're making a point, John. If you go tit for tat between the U.S. and China, we have 330 million people in this country, and they have 1.3 billion people in China. If China went tit for tat, not that you fight wars this way, but if they did tit for tat and they lost 300 million people, and we all have a commensurate number of persons that are killed here, this country's gone and didn't have any population, and they're still 1 billion strong with their population. So numerically, you don't want to be having these countries pushed up in the same unit. And if Iran gets and I'm not so sure they already have it. But if Iran gets the nuclear weapons, and just because they have not declared they have nuclear weapons does not mean they don't have it. And so that's a danger there, because I think they got to go in. I think they got to go in and downgrade Iran. They have got to retaliate. If they allow them to remain on the sideline when they went into Israel, then the security of Israel is off the table. The Iron Dome is not giving the security that it once did. And by them having that breach they had this weekend, a whole different ball game was put into the ballpark, and their national politics have been changed. We're looking at something very, very different.
And then yet now they had people want to challenge it. They think he was too harsh. Now this attack now on Israel pretty much guarantees that he's going to be there for life. That's why I look at it, because they're not going to get everybody else is too weak. All the other candidates are too malleable. I don't think Netanyahu, and I don't like Netanyahu. I'm not saying that. I just think basically this attack's basically ensured his political survival for a long time. I mean, he could be assassinated. I hope that doesn't happen, but I mean, that could be they have people people right in the country now, obviously grabbing, taking hostages. Hamas does. That's who I'm thinking could likely try to grab him and overwhelm his defenses, his security details. That's a possibility, but providing none of that happens, Netanyahu is basically going to be in there till to run of the whole thing.
Yeah, his cap has been feathered by the attacks. We have to be very careful here. We're walking on eggshells right now. The world is a much more dangerous. I could barely sleep last night.
We get a man who can't put a sentence together, being the one that our spokesperson.
That's the danger also.
And they're let's face it, they're laughing up their sleeve at us, man. They are, because this guy can't even walk up steps without falling. And he's supposed to oversee this crucial time now.
Yeah, and then the discombobulation is taking place in the country as well. The fact that we're so now out of control in this country. The courts can't decide whether or not the former president, should. I mean, we're looking. The former president is looking at a possible prison term. I hate to say that, because I think that they're at some point you have to pull back from the madness. But I'm not sure we have the kind of character that in government anymore that's willing to pull back. They seem like they're going full steam ahead to do something that's unprecedented. The former president of the United States, being brought up on charges that he did things and from which he acted inappropriately as president, through which they can, now that he's not president, bring him to court in a court of law and put him on trial for the acts he did as president of the United States. And they're actually discussing whether or not the former president has immunity, presidential immunity. It's not even a question. If that's the danger that we have in this country. If we don't have, they took my article off the screen today. Google, you did that. I was going into the constitutional questions that everybody in this country is missing, and Google wiped it from the screen. They have some technology they're using. I had gotten away. They stopped using it against me for a while. I got very comfortable, and so I stopped saving my article so that if they did erase it, I would have another backup copy and could put it back up again. I didn't do that because for the last week and a half to 2 weeks, they have not been taking my article down. So I didn't go into the backup plan I've been putting in place. And I was typing and getting to the end of the article, made the points about the constitutionality and unconstitutionality was taking place. Only to look up and everything on that screen, including not only what I was typing with it, but what I had saved in the bottom part of that particular site. All that was erased. They got some technology they can go into your computer Don't know if anybody else has faced this or how many of you have faced it. But they have a technology where they can read the screen on your computer before you publish or put down on their site what you're going to paste. I usually type on Google and paste it onto a Facebook. They have technology can go into your site and read what you are writing, and then before you look up, and everything on that site is gone. That's what happened this morning. It's happened a couple of times, but it happened again this morning. What I used to do, I was so upset about them, mad really with them doing that kind of interference and doing that kind of censorship, and I refuse to be censored. So I'd go back and type it all over again. It'd be another 2 hours of my time, and I don't have that kind of time. So I just put up there today on Facebook, told Google leave my articles alone and use a couple of words on them and things of that sort. But that's happened about 3 or 4 times. What I wanted to do was to get out in front of this issue here so this country can reclaim some of the international sovereignty that's lost. Because this country's lost a lot. This country has lost a lot of its mojo, let's say, out there. This country is not viewed the same way it was viewed just a few years ago. I think that the election of 2020 really changed a lot of things. We talk about what happened this weekend. Look what 2020 did in this country. It changed everything. The people around the world, they don't believe this election was a legitimate election. And they're not actually trying to say the election was legitimate. If you look at what they're doing right now, they're saying that I was watching this YouTube video on the trial of Powell. This great attorney, who I think made a fatal mistake. What they did, they said that the election was stolen, and it was stolen because of the use of those machines. Now that's a little bit. We know the election was not an honest election, but to bring in this company and put it in their lap that their algorithm changed the election in 2020. That's a little bit. That's that bridge again. That bridge too far, and the company sued them because they lost a lot of money, a lot of credibility, and that's what this fight is about. That's why they're jamming them up. They're not jamming them up on the fact that the election had some questions. There's no doubt about the elections not being legitimate. By the fact, but it's not because of the machine. It could have been you could maybe have put some things in there that should not have been in there. But the real reason why the elections in those contested states came out the way that it did was because they had violated Article 2 of the Constitution. It's that violation that where the Article 2 says that the state legislatures shall determine the electors of those states. See, don't forget the states elect the states elect the president in this country. The popular vote does not elect presidents in this country. We did not have, listen very carefully, all of you persons talking about there was a overthrow of the government on January the 6th, and got that out there. Everybody's going along with that. We didn't have a government in place on January 6th, other than the one that was elected prior to that 4 years earlier when Trump became president. Trump is president at that time. If he's out there overthrowing the government, he's overthrowing his own government because Trump was elected 4 years earlier, and we had not yet elected a president as of January 6th. The president would have been inaugurated on the 20th of January 2021. that was the certification was to take place on the 6th of January, and that's why they're in Washington to stop the certification of what they felt and had evidence was a fraudulent election. We don't have an election at that time because the election is the Electoral College. The Electoral College was the Electoral College had not spoken, and they went to Washington to see if they would in fact uphold the law of 1887, because that should have kicked in because they had challenges on the vote, both in the House and in the Senate, and they were supposed to at that point postpone the certification until they investigated these complaints, and they did not do that. Okay, well, we're in a very the world is becoming unglued, and we saw an example of that. We're in a much more dangerous world now than we were before this weekend, and everybody's now watching and watch for waiting, and hopefully things can be calmed down. But do not be surprised if the retaliation would widen this war and then other players come into it. This is very, very threatening, and we've got to pay attention to what's taking place right now. Okay, I got to get out of here. I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.